Good afternoon. My name is Gary Albury, and I'm the Director of Student Activities and Campus Life at Laney College. And I would like to welcome you to our webinar on supporting undocumented students and their families. This webinar is in partnership with the East Bay Community Law Center, and we have Ramon and Melissa who will be presenting for us today. A few quick, short announcements before we get started. The first is this webinar is being recorded, and it will be uploaded to Laney College's YouTube page, and you can access it at a later date there. In addition, the chat box is open. Feel free anytime throughout the webinar to type any questions that you may have, and we'll be sure to get to those questions. I would now like to turn it over to Melissa and Ramon to introduce themselves, as well as get started with the webinar. Melissa and Ramon.
Thank you, Gary. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here with us today. So my name is Melissa Patharanavik. I'm a staff attorney and clinical supervisor at the East Bay Community Law Center, and I'm here with my colleague Ramon.
Hey everyone, my name is Ramon Becerra Alcantar. I'm a paralegal at EBCLC and a Department of Justice legal representative.
So to give you a little introduction about us at EBCLC, so the immigration unit is made up of attorneys, DOJ accredited representatives like Ramon, as well as clinical students who work with us on immigration cases. The East Bay Community Law Center is a nonprofit organization that provides free legal services to low-income communities. And we at the immigration unit have a partnership with 4 community colleges in the Bay Area, Laney College, Chabot College, College of Alameda, and Merritt College. And we're working with these colleges to provide free immigration legal services to their students. The East Bay Community Law Center has several units in addition to immigration, including housing, health and wellness, and consumer protection. So we're able to offer holistic representation to our clients and referrals to these other units as well. So just a few disclaimers before we get started. So this presentation is meant to be informational only and does not constitute specific legal advice. The process and limitations that apply to any individual case can be different. So if you have any questions about your personal situation, please sign up for an individual legal appointment with one of us. And here on the PowerPoint, you can see the links for your specific college, and then we'll show them again at the end. All right, so we have a pretty ambitious agenda for today's webinar. We're going to talk about DACA and what you can expect in the upcoming months and what you can do now to renew your DACA. We're also going to talk about the new public charge rules under the Trump administration and also touch on some COVID-19 health and employment resources and financial aid resources that we hope can be helpful to you at this time, and give you an overview of our legal services and how we can help you. So I'm going to pass it on to Ramon to talk to you about DACA.
All right. So I'm gonna begin to talk about DACA. So what is DACA? So DACA was the result of youth organization, and it came out as a failure to pass the federal DREAM Act. And just to differentiate the federal DREAM Act from the California DREAM Act, which I will talk about later. So on June 15th, 2012, President Obama announced that the Department of Homeland Security, which is DHS, will not deport certain eligible youth. What DACA is basically a temporary protection from deportation, and it allows recipients to receive a 2-year work permit. So important updates about DACA. At the present time, USCIS is not accepting any new applications for DACA, but anyone who has or has had DACA can renew right now. What does this mean? So there's 2 cases at the Supreme Court at the moment. There's 1 case at the Supreme Court at the moment, and there is 2 issues being that the U.S. Supreme Court is trying to decide upon. The two issues are basically whether the Department of Homeland Security decision to terminate the deferred action for childhood arrivals can be viewed by the courts, can be reviewed by them. And number two is whether DHS or the Department of Homeland Security decision to terminate the DACA policy, both the process and the decision itself is lawful. So expecting a decision to come out any time. We are in May, so any day we're expecting a decision to come out from now until June. So that's why. So the possible outcomes that can happen, or what possible outcomes that we are expecting from the Supreme Court's decision is number one is the Supreme Court could conclude that the courts are not allowed to even review the Trump administration's decision to terminate DACA. The possible bad about this is that the current injunction that allows people to file DACA renewals application may no longer be valid. The current administration could proceed to implement this decision to end DACA and will likely get to decide what to do with DACA renewals applications that are pending at the time. The possible good about this is that in the future, through a different administration, they could reopen DACA and even provide a stronger protection that DACA than DACA does right now. If the court's reasoning applies, the administration's decision could be protected from challenge in the courts. And number two, the court could rule that the termination of DACA is unlawful. The court could put the situation back to the day before the government announced that it was terminating DACA, which is September 4, 2017, when renewals, new first-time applications, and advanced parole were all available. We'll have to see the exact language of the court's decision before we know the extent of protections for DACA. And we can't be certain how the Trump administration will respond to the court ruling this way. For example, the court rules that the administration could potentially try again. If the court rules, the administration could potentially try again and end the DACA based on different legal reasoning. Number three, the court rules that DACA can theoretically be terminated, but that the way that the Trump administration tried to terminate it was unlawful. The reasons that the court reaching this decision will affect how abruptly the DACA program is scaled back or terminated completely. If the court concludes that the process by which the government decided to end DACA was legally sufficient, this administration will determine how DACA is rolled back. Under this scenario, we'll have to see what the administration does about one, the processing DACA renewal applications that are pending at the time the court issues the decision, and two, either allowing work permits to expire on their stated expiration dates or attempting to recall work permits and DACA protections that have not yet expired. Number four, the court could conclude that DACA is unlawful. What this means is there will be no longer a possibility for new first-time DACA applications to be accepted by USCIS, and the government will stop accepting DACA renewal applications as well. It's possible that the work permits issued to DACA recipients will remain valid until their expiration dates, but whether they do will depend on the court's reasoning and how the administration reacts to the court's decision. And with this, it will bring opportunities to advocate for new forms of relief. Um, so so what can you do right now? I think the number one thing that people can do right now, um, is renew your DACA. Like make an appointment with us to be able to renew your DACA and be screened for other relief options. Um, I want to just point out that fee assistance is available currently, but is a first come first serve basis. So it's important that you do it as soon as possible if you want to save those $495. Um, Another thing that we want to just let you guys know is a good thing to do is to begin saving your money in case you need it for new applications. Another thing is to know your rights, to make a family preparedness plan. ILRC has a family preparedness guide, which cover different topics on how to make a plan. Find out You can find out about your immigration options. Or one of the things that they talk about in that plan is to find out about your immigration options, which you can do that by having an attorney or a legal representative screen you for any available immigration reliefs. Another thing that they talk about is making a child care plan. And the reason for this is because you never know what could happen. We don't know what it means once DACA is terminated. There's a lot of anxiety about potentially DACA recipients being detained, but we don't know what that means or how would that look like. So it's better to be prepared for that, just in case, just to make sure that children are taken care of in case something happens. Another thing is that it's important to file important documents away. So finding a place where you can file important documents, and you can find more information in that guide. I will be including this, or I will send it to Gary, and then he can include it in the email that he blasts, and I will include it for the additional colleges as well. And I think one of the most important things is taking care of your mental health. Seeking out mental health services and support at your campuses, or seeking out community resources. One of the community resources that I wanted to highlight is Immigrants Rising as a great place to start. They have a mental health connector, which provides undocumented youth, people with psychological support. All undocumented young people who reside in California and are comfortable conversing in English are eligible for the service. So go ahead and go to their website, which I will include with the recording as well. Another thing is that Immigrants Rising is doing as well is they're hosting a virtual wellness gathering. The next one is on May 20th. So if you're interested, go to their website and sign up for that. I think it's a very, very good resource. So yeah, so with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Melissa.
Thanks, Ramon. All right. Before we move on to public charge, I just want to highlight a few of the important things that Ramon said, just for the folks who jumped on a little later. To recap, you absolutely renew your DACA now, and anyone who has DACA or had DACA can renew. So anyone whose DACA is expiring, even if it's next year, should reach out to us and work with us on renewing your DACA. And the reason why we want to encourage folks, even with DACAs that are expiring next year, to renew is because in the worst case scenario that DACA is going to end, we are hoping that they will still honor applications that are already filed. So we're just trying to get your DACA and your work permit extended for as long as possible. And even if you had DACA in the past and it expired, please reach out to us because you're still eligible to renew even if it's expired. So reach out to us to help you with that. All right. so we're going to move on to talk about public charge. This is another change under the Trump administration, and we know that a lot of folks are concerned about public charge and have questions about how it applies to them and whether it'll affect their immigration applications. We've received questions about which public benefits are safe to apply for, and we know that's an even greater concern right now when so many people are experiencing health issues, reduced wages, or unemployment during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we hope to answer those questions for you today. To give some background, the Trump administration started enforcing new policies related to public charge, and these changes went into effect as of February 24th, 2020. So there are courts still deciding whether these changes are legal or not. So it's possible that these new policies might be stopped in the future, but for now, they are in effect, so they do apply. So what is public charge? Public charge is an immigration law term that refers to someone who may need government assistance or public benefits in the future. So being a quote-unquote public charge is a reason that a person could be denied a green card, a visa, certain types of visa, or admission into the US. And the key question being asked here is, will an applicant for a green card or some visas likely depend on the government for financial support in the future? However, this question or this test does not apply to everyone, and that's what we really want to communicate here today. So the Trump administration is obviously trying to make it harder for low-income people to get green cards, and by applying a stricter test to determine, whether a person seems likely to use certain public benefits in the future. But it's a misconception that this applies to everyone applying for any kind of immigration benefit. In fact, many people are not affected by this public charge rule and can use public benefits without any immigration consequences. So there are multiple factors that are considered in the public charge test, such as age, income, education, in addition to the use of public benefits. But we're not going to talk about the specific standard today or the specific factors. We're just going to focus on who it applies to and what public benefits programs are safe to use. All right. The public charge rule, who does it affect? So it affects individuals who are applying to enter the US from outside of the US. It applies to individuals who are applying for a green card or to become a permanent resident based on a petition filed by a US citizen or permanent resident family member. And it applies to people who have a green card, so permanent residents, who leave the US for more than 6 months and are re-entering the US. So practically what this means, what most people will want to know is that the public charge rule affects people who are applying for a green card based on a petition filed by their US citizen or permanent resident parent, spouse, or child. So who does it not affect? So many immigrants are not subject to the public charge test at all. So the public charge rule doesn't affect US citizens, it doesn't affect permanent residents or people who already have their green cards unless you leave the US for more than 6 months. It will not affect people who have their green cards who are applying to renew their green cards or who are applying for US citizenship. People applying to renew their DACA or TPS, temporary protected status, are not subject to public charge. Refugees, asylees, U visa holders, T visa holders, VAWA self-petitioners, and special immigrant juveniles, or anyone who's applying for any of these statuses are also not subject to public charge. All right, so are undocumented individuals affected by the public rule? So anyone who is undocumented and not planning to apply for any immigration benefit is simply just not subject to public charge. Beyond that, undocumented individuals are generally not eligible for public benefits, and there are some significant exceptions to that listed here. So, for example, Medi-Cal is available for undocumented children under 21 and pregnant women. Medi-Cal is available to DACA recipients, and there are other public benefits that are safe to use for people with pending immigration applications, and I'll go into that in a minute. So the bottom line is really that if you're not eligible to apply for a green card through a family member right now or in the near future, there may be no advantage to giving up the necessary benefits that you need right now. So undocumented individuals who are planning to apply for a green card through a family member should talk to an attorney or legal representative for advice about your specific situation. And anyone who's in a mixed status family, so if some of your family members have legal status and some of your family members don't, you should also contact an attorney for advice because the situation might be a bit different for you. All right, so what public benefit programs are safe to use? So there are many public benefit programs that are still safe to use and don't have any immigration consequences. That includes, and I mentioned this earlier, children under 21 and pregnant women can still access Medi-Cal or Medicaid, including WIC in California. You can access emergency Medi-Cal. School-funded programs like Head Start or free or reduced cost school meals are safe to use. Disaster relief is safe to use. It's important to note also that use of public benefits by family members, such as children, will not count against you. Also important to remember that receiving public benefits doesn't automatically make you a, quote, public charge. It's only one factor in a test that considers other circumstances. So in general, you should talk to an immigration attorney or legal representative before withdrawing from public benefits or making some sort of important decision that could affect the well-being of your family, because it's very possible, again, that there's no immigration consequences for accessing the health and public benefit programs that you need and qualify for. All right, I also wanted to highlight some public benefits that are safe to use and that could be available to you, depending on whether you have a certain immigration application on file or a certain immigration status approved. So this depends on the type of application and whether the application is pending or approved. So if you have a pending asylum application, you're eligible for full scope Medi-Cal. If you have an approved asylum application, you're eligible for full scope Medi-Cal, food stamps, and CalWorks. If you have a pending or approved special immigrant juvenile status petition, you are eligible for full scope Medi-Cal. And then if you have a pending or approved U visa application, you're eligible for full scope Medi-Cal, food stamps, and CalWorks. And these are public benefits that, again, are safe to use under the public charge rule. All right, there are public benefits that are risky to use under the new public charge rule. Public housing or Section 8 housing, Medi-Cal or Medicaid, but again, noting those exceptions I mentioned earlier for emergency services, and for children under 21, pregnant women, and women up to 60 days after pregnancy. Food stamps, so SNAP or CalFresh, or cash assistance provided by any entity, so any federal, state, or local government, and that includes CalWorks, SSI, and any general cash aid. But remember, not everyone is subject to public charge. This applies mostly to individuals who are applying for a green card based on a U.S. citizen or permanent resident family member. So when I say these programs are risky to use, I mean that if you are going to be applying for a green card based on a family petition, then you should talk to an attorney before applying for or using the public benefits listed here. Okay. And the one thing we really want to stress today is that everyone, no matter their immigration situation, can access treatment and testing and other health care that they need for COVID-19 or the coronavirus. So everyone at this time, given the pandemic that is happening, should get the care that they need. And testing or treatment for COVID-19 is not considered a public charge issue for purposes of your immigration status or application. So you should not hesitate to get testing if you need it, if you're experiencing those symptoms. Okay, we also wanted to share some health and employment resources that may help folks during this pandemic. So Hayward has free COVID-19 testing. They have a hotline call center that you can call, and they also have testing available at Cal State East Bay. You can go to this website listed here for more information about that. It's free and open to anyone, regardless of where you live or your immigration status. Oakland and Alameda County also have testing centers, and they have Alameda County provided an updated list of testing centers, again, at the link listed here. And we will share this PowerPoint. Gary will share this PowerPoint at the end so that you all will have this information. And then make sure to look at the requirements for each of the testing centers, because some of them are, open to all residents, and some of them you have to have certain symptoms to be able to get tested there. And you can find all that information again at the link listed here for Alameda County. All right. Okay, we know lots of folks have questions right now about, what to do if they've been let go from their jobs or if their wages have been reduced. And we wanted to direct you to Legal Aid at Work, which has really excellent resources for workers and undocumented workers. So they have a workers' rights guide, a frequently asked questions document, a fact sheet about unemployment insurance. They also have a list of relief funds for undocumented workers. So if you don't qualify for, California unemployment insurance for some reason, then you can look into these relief funds that could be available to you depending on where you live. Legal Aid at Work also is still doing their virtual workers' rights clinics, and they also have helplines. So you can call them with questions about your specific employment situation. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Ramon to talk to you all about financial aid resources.
Give me 1 second. I don't know why. So struggling with technology. All right. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna be talking about financial aid resources, specifically for undocumented folks. So I wanted to start off just by talking about AB 540 and SB 68. So what is AB 540 and SB 68? So AB 540 extends students, including undocumented students who meet eligible requirements from out-of-state tuition fees. What basically that means is that you'll be eligible to pay in-state tuition, which saves you a ton of money. So if you have not looked into it and are paying a lot of money, I suggest you look into it. I'm sure the schools have already talked to you about this, but it's something that I wanted to touch upon. SB 68 is something that was introduced in 2017. And basically, it expanded AB 540 to include adult schools and California community colleges, attendance, and other graduation or degree requirements to be eligible for in-state tuition. So all students to be eligible for AB 540 and SB 68 must meet a two-part requirement. The part one is time and coursework requirements. And there's two things that you can fulfill that you can use to fulfill this requirement. Number one is the attendance for 3 full-time years or equivalent at any combination of the following, which is California high school, California adult school, California community colleges, or the other option to fulfill this part one is if 3 years of California high school credits along with 3 years of total attendance at a California elementary school or California secondary school, or any combination of the three. It's a little complicated, so if you have more questions about this, please feel free to reach out to the financial advisor at your school. The second part of this requirement is a degree and unit requirement. So any completion of the following will do, which is a graduation from California high school or equivalent with like a GED, attainment of an associate degree from a California community college, fulfillment of minimum transfer requirements from a California community college to a UC or CSU campus. So any of those will fulfill part two. But remember, you have to fulfill those two parts to be eligible for both AB 540 and SB 68. For more information, and I think a great resource for students is if you visit your school website, but also Immigrants Rising. They have a in-state tuition tool for California to make sure that you see you can answer a few questions, and then it will tell you right there whether or not you're eligible for AB 540 or SB 68, so that you can pay for in-state tuition. So use that resource. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is federal versus state funding. So the first thing to note is that undocumented students, including DACA recipients, are not eligible for any federal money, which includes grants and loans and anything that the federal government is providing for education. So I wanted to talk about the qualifying for AB 540 and SB 68 provides students with ability to pay resident fees and apply for state-based financial aid through California DREAM Act if they're eligible. The California DREAM Act is a state-based financial aid program for eligible undocumented students that was established in spring 2012 by the California Student Aid Commission. The California DREAM Act allows AB 540 and SB 68 students to apply to state programs such as EOP and EOPS. It also makes you eligible for certain scholarships administered by the public institutions. And the deadline is always March 2nd of every year. So make sure you mark that in the calendar because it's very important that you apply. Since you are not eligible for any other like federal financial aid. It's important to note that undocumented students do not need DACA to apply for the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act and DACA are two different things. And I spoke about it a little bit earlier, how like the federal government had a federal dream act that didn't go through, and that's why DACA was implemented. California has their own dream act, and it's specifically for financial aid for undocumented students. Um, I also wanted to let you guys know that there are a lot of outside scholarships available for undocumented students. So a great list, and there are various lists online that you can look up. But one of my favorite lists, was from Immigrants Rising. They compile a list of all of the different scholarships available for anyone, regardless of status in the United States. So please visit Immigrants Rising for a great list of undergraduate scholarships. So yeah. So what we wanted let you guys know is to make an appointment. If you have any questions or anything, or if you want to renew your DACA, even if it expires next year, like Melissa said, please, it's important that you make an appointment with a legal representative or immigration attorney. We are at the different campuses, like Melissa shared. I myself are at Laney and Merritt. Melissa is at Chabot and Alameda. So please, just make an appointment, get individual legal advice, and we can screen you for the different immigration remedies that you could potentially be eligible for. So at the moment, all of our appointments are virtual, being held by phone or video. And as you can see, we put the different links for the different colleges. Whichever college you attend, use the appropriate link to make an appointment. One of the things that we ask from students is that at the time of the appointment, that there's somewhere where they can speak about private and sensitive topics. You definitely don't want to be at Starbucks and talking about your immigration status and sharing a lot of like private information at Starbucks. So please find a place where you can speak for about an hour or so freely, so that we can conduct a very thorough screening of your immigration rights. So now we're gonna turn it for Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself or type any questions that you have in the chat. And if for any reason you don't feel comfortable, then you can also email us at the different email addresses for each appropriate school. So I'm gonna turn it over for Q&A.
So thank you so much, Melissa and Ramon, for sharing this very important information with us. Like you mentioned, Ramon and Melissa, we're going to have a Q&A session now. So if you do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we will get those questions answered for you. So we do have someone that raised their hand. Let me see if I can unmute you.
I can unmute myself.
Perfect.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to point something out, and I have a question. And Ramon, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also important for people to know that federal law is greater than state law, and one of those big things that is being brought as DACA recipients, it's the marijuana issue, because it's legal in California. It is not legal across the United States. So you want to be mindful of those different types of laws. The question for me is, do we have an idea of where the Supreme Court is leaning towards? I know this is really hard because it's really uncertain of what's going to happen. But what are the other legal reasons that the Trump administration might have to stop DACA?
Melissa, do you want to take this, or you want me
Yeah. So we we truly cannot
yeah.
cannot guess what will happen.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the scenario that we are preparing for, that lots of legal organizations, including us, are preparing for, is that DACA will end, but that they will continue to honor applications that have already been filed. That's not to say so much that that we think that's the most likely thing to happen, but I think just we're all preparing for the worst case scenario, and giving how the Supreme Court is leaning, and giving sort of taking into account the makeup of the Supreme Court at this moment. We're not necessarily feeling optimistic, but that's not to say we just don't know, is the thing. And so the best thing we can really do at the moment is get everybody's renewal applications on file, and hope that at the very least the applications that have already been filed will be processed and will be honored. Nice. So that's what we're trying to address right now.
Thanks. Ramon, did you want to add anything to that?
So yeah, I mean, Melissa said it all, but just I think it's very we don't know what's gonna happen, so it's good to just be prepared for whatever is gonna happen. We don't know, so the best thing to do right now is just renew your DACA as soon as possible if you have DACA.
So on that same topic, a particular question that came up is any tips in renewing a DACA without using a lawyer?
That's you.
So, well, first I'll say that if working with us here at EBCLC is a free service. So working with me and Ramon, there are no out-of-pocket costs for you. So really, no disadvantage to working with an attorney or legal representative to renew your DACA. If you have any issues in your immigration situation, or if you have a criminal history of any kind, we really don't recommend trying to renew your DACA on your own. If you have a straightforward case and you have a copy of all of the applications you've filed in the past, and there is nothing new or different about your application, perhaps you might be okay sort of going forward on your own. But again, working with us is completely free for you. And as Ramon mentioned, we could also help you secure fee assistance for your application on a first come, first served basis. So not only can we help you make sure that your application is correctly filed with all the right information and dealing with any issues you might have in your background, but we can also help secure fee assistance for that $495 fee that you'd have to pay to renew. So our advice is really to reach out to us, and at the very least, make sure that you have copies of the previous applications that you filed, to know that the new application that you're submitting is consistent with what you submitted in the past.
Ramon, did you want to add?
Yeah, so I also want to add to that is that with us helping you with, or any attorney helping you with your DACA renewal, it also comes most likely, at least for us, speaking for us, we do provide a consultation right there and there. So you can also explore the different remedies out there, remedies that you might not be aware of. Immigration law is always changing. It's been crazy. Like this past few, with this administration, it's just been crazy. Like it's ever changing. So there might be something that you became eligible for, but you're just not aware of. So it's good to always just meet with an attorney and just get a sense of like if you are eligible, and if you're not eligible, at least you get information of the different remedies out there. So I highly suggest that you reach out to an attorney. and come to us if you're on campus. Yeah.
Great question. So a follow up to that, like, can you all speak to students just feeling comfortable and wanting to reach out for assistance, for help, knowing that it's a free service in which you all are offering? Just speaking to that, where a student doesn't have to worry about their information being shared with anyone.
Yeah. So anything that you, as legal representatives, anything that you share with us is confidential. It's attorney client work product. So anything that you share with us won't be shared with anyone outside of our unit. And with that said, as far as for me, I have a supervisor that I have to check in with, so I have to provide information to them. But yeah, like everything is confidential. Melissa, do you want to add something?
Yeah, so anything that you share with us is private and confidential and doesn't get shared outside of our organization without your permission. Um, we totally acknowledge that, it's a unique situation that we're in right now, given the shelter in place orders and the pandemic, because we're not able to meet you in person. So all of our communication right now is happening over the phone or over Zoom and by email. And we know that can feel kind of nerve wracking to suddenly hand over all of your information and documents to people you've never met before. But we're very happy to have continuous conversations with you about, how to work together to make you all feel comfortable. But yes, the bottom line is anything that you share with us is, again, private and confidential, and will not be shared with anyone outside of our organization.
Good. Thank you for that. One of the questions was about scheduling appointments, and as you can see, Melissa indicated in the chat each campus in which they work with a link that you can click on, and you can schedule an appointment online. So thank you for that.
Oh, and I also wanted to mention, and I'm sorry about this, but I noticed that in our PowerPoint there was a typo in the link. So we'll make sure that we fix that before we send a PDF version over to the campuses to distribute. So
sure. Good. All right, so I don't see any other questions in the chat. Do you all have any closing remarks? Anything you want to add that maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on before we wrap it up? We good?
Well, that was good. And if you weren't comfortable asking a question here, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, those individual campus emails are in that PowerPoint. And we're here to assist in any way or answer any questions that anyone might have.
Good. Thank you. All right. So thank you again, Ramon, Melissa, East Bay Community Law Center. We are grateful for you all to join us today and sharing this vital information to support our students. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this PowerPoint as well as the recording will be made available on Laney's YouTube page. So feel free to actually visit there. So thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you around. Thank you. Be safe and be healthy. Be well.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.